I'm going to take you through the Shutdown Emergencies presentation, and I'm very happy that on the last session, Mr. Derek Martin discussed the art of executing self-shutdowns. And today I'm just going to talk about shutdown emergencies. Okay. Okay, hello, everyone can hear me? I think I'm having problems with my machine. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes, we can. I can see your screen. I don't know about others.
Yeah, I can see it very clearly too.
All right.
We can hear you clearly.
All right, thank you. On here, if you see on my presentation, I've actually took plant shutdowns as an example. Being someone coming from the mining industry, you talk of shutdowns actually relate to plant shutdowns because these are some of the shutdowns usually we partake. Quarterly, some we take them yearly, and other people can actually call it a turnaround. And as you know, shutdowns are this is one of the procedures that we usually take, not every day on our daily basis. And here is the temporary closure of infrastructure to perform maintenance. And as you know, maintenance are something that's usually happening not on daily basis, but you know, some people schedule the maintenance in order for how to conduct these maintenance on certain equipment, and usually shutdowns are best time to conduct these sessions. And the main activities should be preventative in nature, with a focus on equipment inspections. And you know, this is the opportune time to replace worn out or broken processes, materials, and equipment as they use for the end of life. And also remember now, every time when there is a shutdown, as Mr. Derek last time discussed on the art of executing self-shutdowns, you talk of the emergencies, the way that they planned how to conduct the shutdown and the time frame that they took, you know, unexpectedly. And these are some of the emergencies that can happen during the shutdown. And a lot of emergencies can happen during the shutdown processes. And as you can know, so I find it so wise to talk about the emergency itself, which really is a serious, unexpected, and often dangerous situation requiring an immediate action. And usually when there is an emergency, there is something that is unexpected. And usually when something that is unexpected, it comes when people are not unprepared. And also on the plant shutdowns are essential procedure for many construction companies, mining companies. In fact, it's something that cannot be compromised on, be it for equipment maintenance, replacement, or repurposing reasons. A plant shutdown is required to prevent an unforeseen shutdown in the near future. And also, shutdown emergencies may be natural or man-made and include the following, and may not be limited to the ones that I've listed before: and issue of floods, fires, toxic gas release, chemical spillages, radiological accidents, explosions, civil disturbances, and many others apart from these ones that I've just indicated. And the workplace emergency is an unforeseen situation that threatens your employees, customers, or public disrupts, or shutdowns your operations, or cause physical, environmental damage. And so now, during the emergencies, there's certain things that we should make sure we should ensure that we have them at the workplaces, especially the issue of emergency service protocols that apply in an emergency. And during the emergencies, there are certain phases that we should use to ensure that everything during the when we encounter an emergency, we're supposed to manage in certain scenario or emergencies during the shutdown emergencies. And you can check there's a planning phase, there's a response phase, and the mitigation phase. And on the planning phase is that phase where people started the preparedness plan, where the agencies decided how to respond to a given incident, set circumstances, what is it that we need in case of emergencies, what is it that we should provide as an organization or as a company. And on the response phase is the phase where people now need to determine and agencies need to execute their plans, ensure that all the plans are in place, and may end up improving some areas of their response due to the gaps in the planning phase, where maybe some of the things that on the planning phase didn't go well, and which are inevitable due to the individual nature of most incidents. And in the clear up from the incident or the help or people involved to overcome their mental trauma. And on the mitigation phase, this phase involves which involves taking steps to ensure no reoccurrence if possible, or putting additional plans in place to ensure less damage is done on the previous incidents that could have been occurred or the past events. And now this process should be fed back into the preparedness stage with update plans in place to deal with the future emergencies that's completing the whole cycle. So now it's a cycle that it's a cycle form where we need to plan something. After the planning phase, we need to actually come up with the responses. What is it that we need to be done in case of an emergencies, and how best are we going to come out with the mitigation phase. And as we come out now with the emergency plan, in order for us to make sure we manage the shutdown emergencies, the first thing that we should have as an organization, we should ensure that we have what we call the emergency plan. And remember, on the emergency plan, a lot of things need to be included, and it's one of area that I've actually seen a lot of emergency plan forget about it. We should ensure that a way to alert the employees and including the disabled workers, as Mr. Gallo have been highlighting, and in his previous toolbox talk, he highlighted things to do with the disabled workers. Remember, a lot of people forget what is it that people should do in case of an emergency. They forget we have disabled workers, and what is it we should do when we have disabled workers within our workplaces. So let's always ensure that on our emergency plan, we must include disabled workers and how to evacuate or take those people or those disabled workers, and also take other actions in place to ensure that the emergency plan is effective. And also how to report emergencies during the course of an emergency. Let's always ensure that we understand, we put that in consideration, how we should report the emergencies and as required. And also, for the plan to be, what will the effective planning have to be? We should also ensure that we safeguard our investments in crucial resources, our human resources, our physical resources, be it business continuity. We should also help to determine our business vulnerabilities and also shorten the time to effective recovery. And also, let's also ensure that we minimize the cost of the recovery when we are doing the emergency planning. And also, let's avoid confusion and reduce exposure to error in the recovery process, as we highlighted on the emergency services protocol that you apply in an emergency. And also, let's avoid duplication of efforts during this recovery process. And that should be our goal, to ensure that we avoid the duplication of these efforts, so that, remember, it's an emergency, and when emergency comes, we should ensure that our plan just goes straight to the aim, straight how we should manage the certain circumstances if we encounter any certain emergencies. And also, for us, let's ensure that we have the components of a good emergency plan, right? As the first thing that we should put in person is the emergency personnel. Remember, this is an emergency, and during the emergency, we should ensure that we have all the trainings in place. Let's have the personnel who start at the basics. Let's ensure that we have the first aiders, we have the firefighters. We have also even go to the extent of having the mine rescue teams, and ensure these personnel are trained, and the training, they should have training within course to time. Remember, the first aid expires, and let's ensure we have retrainings conducted on these emergency personnel so that they're always being equipped. And let's all have mock drills conducted, whether to the first aiders, they should take the mock drills, the firefighters, they should also do drills in preparation of the emergency. And also on that, let's always ensure that we put those components on the emergency plan. And also other thing that we should consider to ensure that our emergency is effective, or emergency plan is effective in case of red and shutdown emergencies. Let's always ensure that we have emergency communication, and the communications should be, the communication should be done. People should address, they should know the communication strategies during the emergency. What stage, who to be reported to. The control center should always be alert. What is it if an emergency happened, who to contact, who to notify, the notifications on the notice boards. Let's ensure all these components are being addressed and they're communicated, and all employees are addressed and they are aware of emergency communication. So that during the emergencies, everyone will know from point A, you go to the point B, from point B, you go to the point C. And also, let's ensure that the emergency equipment is in place. During emergencies, people tend to relax, people tend to forget, people end up seeing during the emergencies that maybe the fire extinguishers that are discharged, they're expired, their hoses, they're not working. Let's always ensure maybe for example, we take maybe of fire incident during these shutdowns. We have an incident of a fire, and people now they don't even know where the equipment are, who to take the equipment. So let's always ensure that these emergency equipment are available and always in place, they're inspected. Let's make sure we have checklists in place to ensure that these equipment are inspected, and let's appoint people who are in charge of these equipment. And also the emergency transportation is one of the components that people should look into in case of emergencies. We'll talk of the ambulance, the fire tenders. Let's always ensure that we have an adequate transportation to transport our people during emergencies. Remember, on shutdowns, people are very busy and there's a lot of people, we have visitors, we have other business partners that we've conducted, construction companies actually in place, we've hired a lot of people. So let's always ensure, let's take consideration, let's go beyond our scope and check, do we have adequate transportation? Do we have adequate equipment? Do we have adequate personnel to ensure that when we have emergencies, shutdown emergencies, or we don't have losses? Remember, the time need to be taken consideration. On shutdowns, people will plan, maybe as Mr. Derek Martin said last time, maybe during the emergencies, they actually set up some days that they will need to take 1 or 2 days during the shutdown, but because of poor planning, maybe the components of emergency plan were not in place, those guys end up reaching up to 13.5 days. So let's always ensure that the emergency planning also is taken care of. So all these components of emergency plan should be in place. And if you check, if all these things are in place, you're going to see that during the shutdown emergencies, our losses or our cost of reduction, there will not be, we don't lose a lot during our shutdown emergencies because we enhance that our components of emergency plan are in place and are effective. And also, during shutdown emergencies, let's always ensure that everyone know the emergency plan. And on this one, I say employee involvement is very essential. Let's always ensure we involve employees. Let's always note that our emergency plan is none. Being on the notice boards, people should be communicated during the inductions. When actually having people inducted, let's ensure our shared practitioners, whoever will be taking induction processes, let's always ensure that these things are being communicated and people are aware of our emergency plan. Let's start with the emergency routes, this being the first one. Let's always ensure that the escape routes are in place. The escape routes are known, and the routes are at a place where they don't mix with other things. During the emergencies, people end up being stampeded because maybe the emergency routes are not effective. Let's ensure that the escape routes are in place and they're communicated, and signs, the propaganda is in place for the emergency routes. And as the assembly points, being the number 2, as an emergency plan, let's ensure that assembly points are in place and they're at a place that are visible for everyone. Then during the emergencies, people, they know the assembly point, escape routes leading straight to the assembly points. That's the second thing that we should know, and our emergency plan should include these things. And also, there's one thing that usually left behind, that's our refugee base in the work areas. Let's always ensure that our refugee base are in place, and we have a monitoring too to always ensure that the components being maybe what is it that should be at the refugee base are in place, and these 3 things are known. So let's always know that our emergency plan is effective. If we check, if we monitor, and we address, going back to our planning phases, let's always ensure that the emergency plan is being communicated and everyone know, and escape routes are in place, the assembly points that are known and also that are in place, the refugee base in the work area are available or are in place as well. And the purpose of these plans, the purpose of these emergency plans is to document the recovery strategies, essential resources and procedures necessary to implement a recovery process. Let's always ensure that we have emergency procedures in place, the resources, the recovery strategies are documented. During the shutdown emergencies, people should have a recovery strategy. People should have a recovery strategy. What is it that we should do? How we should do it? The procedures are the scope, are the objective communicated, and are they really being in place, and is it necessary to implement a recovery process? And it is often referred to as a disaster plan. And let's also know that emergency disaster can strike anytime, anywhere, and often when you least expect it. So let's always ensure that our emergency plans are in place. Our emergency plan are communicated. And during shutdowns, emergencies, people tend to relax. People put their main focus on the maintenance issue. People are running around on the maintenance issue. People will be behind time. Production will be running against target. And if people tend to be reluctant, not knowing the recovery strategies are in place and the resources, and if procedures are not well communicated and procedures are not well trained, people will have emergency shutdowns. And if these things that I've said, if they're not really implemented, we end up having LTIs, lots of injuries in place, because emergencies and disasters can just strike anytime where people are not in place. And also, one thing that is of key during these shutdown emergencies are employees after an evacuation. And it's very important that accounting for employees after an evacuation of an emergency or of an shutdown emergencies is to ensure that fastest and most accurate accounting of your employees. You may want to consider including these steps in your emergency action plan. Let's always ensure that we take a head count after evacuation. Let's identify the names of employees and our last known location of anyone not accounted for and pass them to the official in charge. Remember, when you on an assembly point, during the emergency, when everyone go to the assembly point, let's ensure that the roll call is being conducted and people take the head count and everything. The head count, people are taking the head count, and let's identify the names of people. Let's identify the names of all our employees so that we don't miss in case some of our employees are being trapped. Accounting for employees following an evacuation is critical. And confusion in building on unnecessary and dangerous search and rescue operations may jeopardize the risk of people getting hurt or getting injured. And when designating an assembly point area, let's consider and try to minimize the possibility of employees interfering with the rescue operations. That people should always note. There are different methods that can be utilized to account for and record all parties not executed, with example in terms of impact on the people and the emergency workers. And to ensure that we should have a well-written emergency plan, we should have a well-written emergency plan for an escape, especially, for example, a fire escape. That's usually one of the major that usually happens on the shutdowns. Let's always ensure that all our staff members or employees should know the location of all the building exits. Let's always ensure that during our induction processes, during our induction forms, let's include the location of the building exits, our exit points. Let's ensure that people are known. During our mock drills, let's ensure that all these location of all the buildings or all the exit points are being discussed, are being highlighted. Also, it's very important to, this one is an example of a written emergency plan as I'm presenting on the slide. Let's always ensure that the location of the nearest fire alarms and how to use them is communicated. People should know the nearest fire alarms. People should know how to use these emergency fire equipment. Count the doors, the distance between their work areas and the nearest exits during the fire incident. Exit signs may not be visible due to smoke or power failure. So sound the alarm and leave the building immediately, closing all doors behind you. If you have been trained as a firefighter, you must try to extinguish fire. But if it's too big, then exit the building and join with other firefighters. Where maybe on certain departments where maybe there's one firefighter, let's ensure that we get other departments to help other firefighters from other sections to help. Let's get assistance so that at least we render these fires in time. And if smoke blocks your primary exit, use another one. If you must exit through the smoke, stay low by crawling on your hands and knees. Help injured and leave others to exit. Check doors before opening them. Kneel or crush the door knob or the frame. If you feel warmth or on or around the door, use another exit route. call the local emergency number, no matter how small the fire appears to be. Let's always ensure, that's a very, very big point. Let's always ensure that no matter how small the incident or the emergency you might think it might be, let's always call the local emergency number for assistance. Let's always call, if it's a fire, let's always make sure that the fire team is in place. No matter during the emergency, let's always make sure that the ambulance is the medical team is available. Let's always ensure that they're in place, no matter how small the emergency might be. Follow directions from the fire and the security personnel once outside. Move away from the building to the designated meeting location, and also designate assembly areas both inside and outside your workplace where employees should gather after evacuating assembly locations within the building. I often refer to areas of refugees. And also, let's always make sure our assembly points have sufficient space, accommodation for employees. Remember, on shutdowns, we have a lot of people in place. So let's always ensure that we have insufficient space for accommodating all of the employees within the work areas. And accounting for employees after evacuation, establish a method of accounting and employees such as suppliers and customers are always left out. So let's always ensure that during our inductions, during that emergency or during our shutdowns, we have people who are in charge. We have people who are in charge of these customers on supplies, so that during the emergencies, we will be able to trace them in case some of these people are being trapped. And also, overall, let's establish procedures for further evacuation in case the incident expands. This may consist of sending employees home by normal means by providing them with transportation to another outside location. And also, let's not forget, during shutdowns, emergencies might be severe. And let's always ensure that we will establish procedures in place for evacuation, and evacuation being the key. Let's always make sure that we have plans during the planning phase, during our mitigation phase, during our response phase. Let's always ensure that we have these plans of how to accommodate these visitors during cases of emergencies. And the normal means of providing them with the transportation, or especially transportation to move them from a place of a shutdown emergency to a place where these people should be rescued. And let's always ensure that we do have thorough systems in place. Remember, during shutdowns, emergencies, a lot of activities are in place. And remember, shutdowns are not something that usually are not day by day, daily things that are happening every day. These are something that can happen quarterly, and hazards may be reluctant. People may fail to identify hazards that are related to the emergencies. Let's always ensure that the issue-based risk assessment is in place, and let's ensure that all parties that are carrying out a shutdown are in place. Let's always ensure that everyone who's supposed to take part during these shutdowns are available, so that we have a very good issue-based risk assessment. It's where we identify, we come out with action plans that will ensure that at the end of the day, we have a shutdown that is effective and emergencies that are manageable. And we should ensure that during our shutdowns, we're able to say zero harm is achievable. And I think on this one, I come to the end of my presentation on shutdown emergencies. It's now time for comments. I thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Magarira, for presenting on shutdown emergencies. So I highlight the point that when you highlight that there is need for training and further emphasis on having emergency procedures laid down and understood by all employees at the workplace. It is very disconcerting that at times procedures are documented and are at the workplace, but employees at times not know or have not been properly trained in regards to such emergency response and preparedness procedures. That when an emergency or disaster occurs, they do not know what to do. For me, the issues on training, on further emphasis of training, running drills, and increasing awareness at the workplace.
Thank you very much for a wonderful presentation. My take-home point was about the plan. It's always good to have a plan. We should make sure that everyone knows, like what the last speaker said, about making sure that everyone learns and is aware of what we're supposed to do. Thank you for that.
Thank you, Mr. Magarira, for the presentation. It was very insightful. Yeah, emergency response and preparedness is very important. And the way we communicate it to our employees, every employee should be aware of how to respond to in case of an emergency. Well, there's something that I've experienced when I was working for a certain company. There was a front-end loader driver. He was just passing by through the engineering guys who were working on a motor, an electric motor. So as he was just about a meter away from them, then he heard the scream. So he then just jumped off his vehicle to go and respond to the guys, but he didn't switch off the vehicle or lift up the handbrake. So as he was responding to that guy, the front end loader kept on rolling and it then hit on a building and damaged the building. Now that was when I realized that the way we respond to certain emergencies, to certain incidents is very important. And it is very, very important because that's when you avoid escalating certain situations from where they would have been. So yeah, emergency response is very important, and conducting mock drills like as it has been highlighted is also important so that you care to do and which settings to respond to and where to go in case of emergencies. Because there are certain times also people tend to be ignorant. For instance, they hear a siren, but you are at the offices, you are away from where the incident had occurred, or you just said there was a fire at the plant, and you then tend to not to go to the assembly point. When people are counting for you, when there's a head count, you'll be missed out and people will start wondering where you are. You then put on the emergency responders, the first aiders, the firefighters on risk of searching for you, maybe in the plant because you are maybe a process attendant. So that's something that needs to be highlighted when communicating these emergency plans. So yeah, thank you, Mr. Simba. It was a very insightful presentation.
I see Ranga, your hand is up. You can go ahead with your presentation before I come in.
Yes, thank you for the time. After this wonderful presentation, I just thought I would share an incident in my life. I was once a victim in an electrical accident, and the parts of the story that I'm told by my colleagues, they tell me about the need to be calm in the midst of emergency situations. We were working, 5 of us. I was the one on a ladder. I got electrocuted after my back came too close to an 11 kV line. But the person who was stepping on the ladder and looking up, making sure that everything was okay, is the one who noticed that I was coming on a free fall, and he aimed for my upper body and saved me. But the part that I want to highlight is that the other 3 people, one of them admits that he had an immediate running stomach. One of them admits that he just turned around and started running, and was stopped by one of the cars that we were using. So from this presentation and a conscious mind for emergencies like these, I'm sure it is important to note that we need to teach our people, our workmates, our colleagues of the need to be calm. You look at the situation that Teach was just outlining. When someone jumps out of a moving construction vehicle to save someone and creates more damage as a result, it's something that if that person had been taught how to be calm in terms of an emergency situation, the situation would definitely not have resulted in the destruction or damage to that building. So that's what I had to say. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Ranga, for that contribution. And thank you to our presenter, Mr. Simbarashe Magarira. Bennett Size, I see your hand is up. You can go ahead with your contribution.
Thanks, Charity. I like what Simba said. Unfortunately, I missed the bulk of the presentation because of the time difference. But I would also want to emphasize that the element of not panicking comes from what the other colleagues have emphasized, the mock drills, because without any experience, any exposure to these kind of things, obviously one is bound to panic when such a thing happens. So these mock drills, when they happen, they actually help in taking away the panic. People then get to know what to do in any eventuality. That's my contribution. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Bennett Size, for that contribution. I think key takeaways from this presentation by Simba. First of all, you have to know your emergency plan. That's where you have to come up with everything, like the components of the plan, knowing when to evacuate and the routes to use. So thank you very much for that. Are there any other questions or contributions? Okay, let me quickly dash to the chat. So Vani Queen says, thank you very much. That was very insightful, profound presentation. Thank you very much from Skumbuzo Ndleche. This is a very good presentation. May you please share the document on email. Okay, to respond to that, we have a YouTube channel. It's called Fanira TV. So after every session, we upload a video of the session on Fanira TV. So I'll share the link on the chat so you can go and subscribe and get notified when the presentation is uploaded. Then we also have Christopher asking for the document on email. So maybe everyone, you can share your email addresses so that we will be able to share the presentation as well. But yeah, okay. So in other news, Fanira is going to be launching a magazine on the 25th of June, and it's called ESH Africa. So as we all know, last month was Mental Health Awareness Month, and we were moving with the theme, "You are not alone." As we all know, the COVID-19 pandemic has resulted in over-reliance on teleworking, and most people have been working from home, and this has had a great impact on mental health. That's the theme for our magazine that we're launching on the 25th, that's next week. It's mainly based on psychological risks at the workplace. So interesting articles in there. So you can also follow us on all social media platforms. That's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. That's when we'll be updating you on the progress with the magazine and details of the launch as well. I'm very, very excited about this magazine, and you should be too, because there's a really lot of content on how best you can assist your workers to ensure that they are safe even as they are working from home. Then our next session, our next ESH eLounge session is going to be on the 2nd of July. And it's going to be on the environmental impact of shutdowns. Our guest speaker for that session is Tendai Kajka Madari. So the link will be shared again on all our social media platforms. So please do follow us so that you do not miss out on any updates. Thank you very much to everyone for participating. I see you're all sending your emails in the chat room. Thank you very much for that. We will share our presentations with you.
Sanjay, may you please get us a photo before we leave?
Okay, you can turn on your videos so that we can take a snapshot. Everyone. Okay, waiting for others to turn on their video. Okay. Say cheese. Thank you. Thank you. It was a great session indeed. We've learned about emergencies, how to respond to those. And next session, we're going to be tackling on the environmental impacts of emergencies with Mr. Kajka Madari. So we hope you'll be joining in, everyone. Thank you for the session. I think you can take this time to just mingle and interact, give everyone the platform right now.